Hi, I'm Cameron McKenzie. I'm the author of What is WebSphere and the SCGA Certification Guide. If you're interested in getting Java certified, head over to www.scj.com. Check out some of my free mock online exams. Even click on a Google ad or two. Help support my site. Buy those books. Charge them to your boss. Anyways, one of the things I wanted to talk about right now was actually just using JSPs and portlets. I created a bunch of portlets in a previous application, all that just were basically individual class files that extended generic portlet, and outputted information to the client without using a JSP. But I actually want to use a JSP for doing display. So I'm going to create a new portlet project, JSR168. I'm going to call it JSP display. Context root JSP display. Oh, that looks very good. I think I'm going to accept that. I'm going to click the next button. Notice that I actually have create a portlet highlighted, so that'll automatically create a portlet for me. I'm going to create an empty portlet. I'm not going to use a web diagram, but I'm going to call it, JSP display looks good. I'll accept all this stuff. Just JSP display, just make it real boring, JSP display. Let's change this. I'm going to make it com.examscam.portlet. And sure, why not? Call it the JSP display portlet. So I'll click the next button. No funky modes or anything. Just create a very, very basic JSP. You notice that I'll end up with a separate project here. So I'll close that, open that. And the question is, where do your JSP files go? So I'm going to create a JSP file that, I don't know, basically takes a look at what the user's preferred language is. If you create a JSP, you put it in the web content folder. So I'll create a new JSP file. What will I call it? I'll call it, I don't know, what did I call it in my example? Sorry, cheating a little bit here. But I got all this code. Well, I called it welcome JSP. That sounds friendly enough. Welcome JSP. That'll be a JSP fragment, but I'm going to keep it like that. Create a basic welcome JSP and take a look at what goes on inside of this JSP. So all of a sudden, IRAD has created a portlet for me. Now, looking at the source code, you'll notice a couple of interesting things here. One is a taglib declaration, making available special information, because this is a portlet JSP, not a normal JSP that runs in a typical servlet JSP application. As well, basically the page directive, that's normal in any JSP. But you notice this custom tag. Really, every portlet JSP you have should have this special custom tag here. And the reason for that is we don't use the normal HTTP servlet request in a portlet. We use, during the rendering phase, the render request and the render response. And by including this special tag here, we get access to the render request and the render response. So I could have a JSP. What do I want to display my portlet? I'll say, welcome to my crazy JSP file. I know your preferred display language. This is all just HTML. And what is their preferred display language? Well, I can use a little expression, percentage equals, and say render request. Anything you want to know about the client, you find out in the request object. And render request, geez, what the heck is the code for that? I'm going to go back to one of my other portlets. I just wanted to demonstrate how anything that you do in a JSP or a portlet, you can do in a JSP as well. There's my country snooper. Then we said request.getLocale.getDisplayLanguage. I'm basically going to take this particular portlet here and render it by using a JSP. And I just couldn't remember the exact syntax, so there we go, render request.getLocale.getDisplayLanguage. Now when this runs, it should display the preferred language to the user using a JSP scriptlet and the special object that's available to us inside of a Portlet JSP called the render request. We also have access to the render response as well. Okay, so I click Save there. Now that's a JSP, that's part of the application, but the question really becomes, how does this particular JSP display, more specifically the portlet, call on that particular file? Well, as you may have guessed, it's done inside of the doView method. The doView method is part of the rendering phase. I'm only worried about the rendering phase right now, which is why I'm getting rid of the process action method, which is associated with the action processing phase. And I cheated a little bit. I got some code right here that's used to actually call on a JSP. But from within my portlet, what I want to do is I want to forward to my welcome JSP file, because that's the name of the JSP file that I just created. Where is that JSP file? Well, in the WSAD, or sorry, IRAD, it puts it under the web content folder. Essentially, that's just the root of the WAR file. That's that's the entry-level folder of the WAR. That's the root of the WAR file. And so, all I have to do inside of my portlet is say, hey, get the portlet context, get the request dispatcher, and include in the display to the client information from this URL, which is really just that there, which is really just the welcome JSP file. There. Does that make it confusing enough? Well, you get the basic idea. That's not a special URL, it's just the name that I gave the variable. Now this particular JSP should forward to my welcome JSP file. And I'll click Control S. I think I'm done now. I'll take a quick look at the portlet deployment descriptor.